So I will be basically speaking on visual rehabilitation in bilateral ocular burns. No financial interests here. So when you're looking at a burns patient, you have to have a very good preoperative assessment, especially if you're looking at a bilateral burns, because you need to decide whether you would want to go ahead with a stem cell based treatment or you would want to go ahead with a keratoprosthesis as such. And between unilateral and bilateral, management of unilateral injury is easier because you do have an autogenic slit, autogenic limbus from the other eye, which you can harvest. For a bilateral injury, you would need an allogenic source of limbus, which could either be a keratolimbal allograft or in certain cases, you might want to consider a mucosal epithelial transplant. So when you're talking of preoperative assessment, basically you need to see whether it's a unilateral injury, it's a bilateral injury. You need to see whether the surface is conjunctivalized or if it is keratinized. Because if it is keratinized, you're probably going ahead with a keratoprosthesis rather than a stem cell based treatment. Again, even in a unilateral or a bilateral eye, you need to look at the amount of stem cell loss which is there, whether it is partial or whether it is total. You need to look at the extent of conjunctival disease. You need to look at the presence or absence of inflammation, the presence of corneal scarring, and the systemic health and age of the patient, because if you want to put the patient under general anesthesia multiple times, that has its own repercussions. Again, comorbid conditions like lid issues, glaucoma, retinal issues need to be addressed. When you're investigating a patient, an OCT is a very good tool before you do any form of stem cell transplant, whether it is in a unilateral injury or in a bilateral injury, because under the pannus, you will have an idea how thick the cornea is. Because if the cornea is very thin, you might want to consider an LK or a PK at the same time. UBM can give you a slightly better idea about the ciliary body status, and a B scan will give you an idea about the retinal status, especially an ONH cupping in cases of chemical injury. When you're looking at conjunctival involvement, obviously both these images are 360-degree limbal deficiency, but the right one will need a lot more works before we actually do a stem cell transplant, whereas the left image we could probably do it a little bit faster. So when you're talking about surface reconstruction, you need to address each things one by one. You need to address the lids, you need to address the conjunctiva, you need to then address the limbus, and then finally you're looking at visual rehabilitation. And the tissues to be replaced would either be the conjunctiva, the limbus, or the cornea, based on a case-to-case basis. There's been a very good paper published by Sheffer Singh and Ahmed Kherka on surgical management for reconstruction of symblepharon based on the severity. So what they basically say is, if your residual conjunctiva goes till the fornix and you only have the bare tarsal area to be bare, you might just go ahead and do an amniotic alone. But if this conjunctiva is falling short of the tarsal plate, it is just coming till the tarsal plate or slightly below, you might want to take a tarsal suture. And if it is an absence of conjunctiva even over the tarsal plate, then you might want to consider combining it with a buccal mucous membrane graft. Again, the extent of LSCD is now being classified and graded. So where it basically classifies it based on the clock hours of involvement, and it classifies whether the central 5 mm is involved or not. So when you're talking about stem cell based treatment, it is imperative to nowadays use this classification, especially in the chronic phase when you are attempting any visual rehabilitative procedures. This is something that we published recently in APJO. So it gives you a broad outline as to how you would approach a patient with a bilateral stem cell deficiency. So if the surface is either moist or it is dry, if it is moist, you need to look at whether the fornix is formed or fornix is shallow. If the fornix is formed, you assess the cornea under the pannus. If the cornea under the pannus is normal thickness, then you try to see whether it is clear or it is scarred. Because if it is clear, you might just go ahead with any of the allogenic limbal stem cell transplant. But if it is scarred, you might have to combine the allogenic limbal stem cell transplant either at the same time or subsequently do an LK or a PK. Similarly, if your fornix is obliterated, you would want to check whether the patient is eligible for an immunosuppression. If the patient is not eligible for an immunosuppression, then you might not go ahead with a stem cell based treatment. You might have to think of keratoprosthesis. If the patient is eligible for immunosuppression, you try to form the fornix. If the fornix is formed, it goes back in the previous version of the slide. If the fornix doesn't form, you again have the option of keratoprosthesis as such. And when you have a dry or a keratinized surface, or if fornix formation has failed, then you have to look at options of keratoprosthesis. So if your fornix is formed and the eye is moist, you might consider doing a type 1 keratoprosthesis. Whereas if your fornix is not as well formed, then you're looking at the lid status. If the lid is deficient, you might want to consider the OKP, the OsteoKPro, or the LuxKPro. Whereas if your lid status is reasonably good, you might consider the OKP, OsteoKPro, or the Boston type 2 keratoprosthesis as such. So these two slides are very important to give you an idea as to what would be your plan of action in patients with bilateral chemical injuries. So coming to certain examples, when you're talking about a limbal allograft, we have the live-related conjunctival limbal allograft, you have the keratolimbal allograft combined with or without a PK, and you have something called as the Cincinnati procedure, where they used a keratolimbal allograft along with live conjunctival limbal allograft from a living relative, basically to cover 360 degrees of the limbus. And now you have the option of doing what is called as the allogenic slit. And in certain situations, and if you have the access to a lab, you could consider doing the cultivated oral mucosal epithelial transplant. But whenever you're talking about an allogenic transplant, there is a higher risk of rejection. You need to use systemic immunosuppression. This is similar to a solid organ transplant. So you have to put them on 3-drug immunosuppression. So this is a patient who had a live related conjunctival allograft and then followed with a PK. He's on systemic mycophenolate and maintaining vision at a 5-year post-op. Again, when you're coming to techniques of keratolimbal allograft, you have basically two techniques. One where you are only doing the keratolimbal allograft, you're not combining it with a PK, and one where you're combining it with a PK. The picture here basically puts the cornea, limbus, and the conjunctival tissue slightly posteriorly. So your limbus of the donor is over here, and the limbus of the recipient is over here. The advantage is you get an additional lenticule of limbus that you can give. So the total number of limbal cells that you transplant is higher. The disadvantage is it needs a longer area for the limbal cells to migrate and cover. The other option is when you are combining it with a PK, you can put the entire limbus as a ring, and then you can suture the graft in the center so that it gets its 360-degree cover. This video shows it. It's a very old video, so the quality is not as good. So basically, once the pannus is peeled, you can put the rim on a Teflon block or on a implant, and then you can dissect the anterior portion. Once your two sutures are in place, you're putting the rim of tissue, and this sutures go through the donor cornea, through the recipient periphery, and through the keratolimbal allograft to give you a 360-degree cover of limbus. Another patient who had a unilateral only eye, where he had a perforation with limbal deficiency, he already had a tube in place, so we did a partial KLAL where we left the area of dissection around the tube so that the tube is functional. In an acute patient, when you present with a perforation like this and there is an absent limbus, one option was to do a tectonic large graft, but then that would have had a much higher chances of failure. So we decided to do it like a keratolimbal allograft so that your central graft is still in the center. And this subsequently, after about 5 months, he underwent an conjunctival limbal autograft from the other eye. He's maintaining 636 vision in that eye. This is what I explained with respect to the Cincinnati procedure. And you also have a modified Cincinnati procedure where they're using the same technique for an injury only in one eye. That is a unilateral injury, where they put a conjunctival limbal autograft and then they put a lenticule of keratolimbal allograft on the side. So they get a 360-degree cover. And this is what they have said reported as the modified Cincinnati procedure. But again, like I said, for any systemic immunosuppression for keratolimbal allografts, you need a triple drug immunosuppression, which is basically tacrolimus, mycophenolate, prednisolone, which will be tapered over a monthly period. But then you will still need to continue on mycophenolate or tacrolimus. This is a patient who had a cultivated oral mucosal epithelial transplant. The problem with mucosal epithelium is the fact that it is not as transparent, and it does induce a bit of vascularization, and it does involve a cost because you need a lab to set the place. However, the advantage is you don't need immunosuppression here. This is a patient who had severe grade 6 chemical injury where there was absent epithelium over the entire ocular surface. We did tenonplasty. You can see it mobilized the tenons, suture it to the limbus, then draped the amniotic membrane over the ocular surface, draped it over the tarsal surface, draped it to the lid margin, secured that, and then did an allogenic limbal stem cell transplant. Basically, here there is no source of epithelium on the soft surface because from lid margin to lid margin, the epithelium has got denuded. So in these cases, you need amniotic can help only if there is a source of limbus, a source of cells. If there is no cells, then there is nothing for it to epithelize. So adding allogenic limbus in this state was basically to epithelize the surface. His one eye was lost because it became thicical. His other eye, we were able to salvage. He got back about 624 vision. And subsequently, he developed a gradual failure of his limbus, which can easily be tackled by a repeat alloslit, where you're just peeling off the pannus and doing it like a modified alloslit. Only in the area where there was the failure, we have placed the amniotic and put an additional top-up alloslit there. And he's maintaining 618 vision in that eye at a 3-year follow-up as such. So we have avoided going the keratoprosthesis route in this case just by the fact that we were able to epithelize the surface faster using allogenic limbus as a source of epithelium. Coming to keratoprosthesis, that would be the end stage option. So if you have a patient who has severe chemical burn with scleral ischemia, we did a tenonplasty, multiple procedures for phonics reconstruction, and finally he underwent a keratoprosthesis, and he has about 6.9 vision at an 8-year follow-up. This is a Boston type 1 keratoprosthesis. Another patient who had a perforation with a symplepharon. So we did a PK with a Comet. The Comet failed. Then we did a keratolimbal allograft that worked for 6 months. It failed. Then we did a Boston type 1, and he's maintaining 624 at 5 years follow-up. Sorry. Another patient with a bilateral burn, one eye was lost, the other eye underwent OKP. She regained vision of 624 for about 10 years. The lamina resorbed. We then underwent a Lucia type 2 under the mucosa, and she has about 2400 vision in her only eye. And it's now almost about 15 years of follow-up now totally. A patient with a severe chemical burn with the lids also affected. The idea was to do the OKP. We did the first part of the procedure in terms of the corneal transplant and the lensectomy, and then we covered the surface with a mucosa, and then subsequently did the OKP, and he's regained 6/6 vision at a 3-year follow-up. Sometimes when you have a very bad acute burn, there are lids are not there. We might want to have desperate measures. We can just do a tarsorrhaphy and close the lid, and then it might live to fight again another day. This patient underwent a skin graft to close his eye, and then subsequently we covered it with mucosa and then did a Lucia type 2. He's maintaining 660 vision at 5 years. And the other person in the right, you can actually see the eye globe moving under the skin graft here. And we opened it up, put a mucosa, and then did a Lucia type 2 through the mucosa. He's retaining about 660 vision at 4 years. Another patient with severe chemical burn who just had a tarsorrhaphy. There was a staphyloma, very large staphyloma. So we opened up the tarsorrhaphy, explored the area, put a large patch graft, and then we combined it with a Boston type, subsequently with a Boston type 2 keratoprosthesis with an Ahmed glaucoma valve implantation with a vitrectomy, and he regained 6/6 vision. His disc was healthy basically because the staphyloma was taking the brunt of his intraocular pressure. Another patient with a bilateral burn, she was query perception of light when she came. But since the patient was very insistent, we said, and we got a VEP done. VEP showed some waves. So, and the patient was insistent. So we said, okay, we will try. We covered the ocular surface with the mucosa, and then we did a Boston type 2 through the mucosa. She got back about 360 vision. She's self-ambulatory and it's now 2.5 years. She's managing her own activity by herself. And this is one of our most challenging cases: severe face deformity, severe eyelid deformity with RD. So we had to do a PK with the retinal detachment. We did a PK with a VR surgery, settled the retina. The overall corneal diameter was very small for a normal Boston type 1. So we had to ask Aurolab to customize a smaller backplate of 6 mm, and we placed that under the conjunctiva. We would have preferred to put a type 2 under the conjunctiva, but in this case, we didn't have the front plate for a type 2. And she got back a reasonable amount of vision. She has about 660 vision. This is how she started off with, and she's now in a school teaching drawing to kids. She does have the conjunctiva overgrowing the optic. So once in 3 to 4 months, she comes back. We need to trim the optic and push the optic back so that she regains and is able to maintain her vision. So to conclude, you do have multiple options to choose from, but you need to choose wisely. You need to confirm the compliance of and follow-up of these patients. It's not a surgery where you can do the surgery today and they come for one follow-up and then they disappear. So you need to be sure that the patients will come back for regular follow-up. There is hope for hopeless. Yes, we do have options now, but you definitely need a team approach, both from the cornea specialist point of view, from an oculoplasty point of view, from a retina point of view, from a glaucoma point of view. And if you're looking at surgeries like the MOKP, you would need a dentist or a maxillofacial surgeon helping you. A team approach will help you maintain the vision gain that you have got, and will help these survivors lead a reasonably normal life. I would acknowledge our patients and the Ocular Surface team at Shankar Nethralaya. Thank you.